It is my job to educate you all on structuralism. So I'm going to start by discussing the three major theorists regarding structuralism. That would be Ferdinand de Saussure, Claude Levi-Strauss, and Roland Barthes. I think the most important one here is Ferdinand de Saussure because he was really the fundamentalist here, and he never got to write an actual book on the things that he was saying, but he was a professor or something, and his students, after he died, they like compiled all their notes and things that they had taken in his class, and they published a book under his name, and that's how we have all this great knowledge. So let's go over my first point. The language, which I will further refer to as the mechanism or signifier, is more valuable than the speech, which is the individualized usage of the language. So this is basically to say that the way the things are written are more important than the way they would be said, if that makes sense, which is my job to make it make sense. So when you're applying structuralism to a work, you're not looking at how the things are being said. You're looking at specifically just what's being said. No connotation, just the words, right? And so this is important because this is where the name of the theoretical framework comes from, because structuralism means that you're focusing on the structure, you're focusing on what upholds the words that are being used. So that leads into my next point. The purpose of the mechanism is not to signify a thing, but to create a concept. So when we're talking about, the example that I used here was Pepsi. When we're talking about Pepsi, we're not talking about the soda. We're not talking about the company. We're talking about the concept behind the company, which is to make money, right? And if you want to go further than that, then why make money? To create classes, to prove superiority, things like that. So when you use Pepsi, you're automatically creating a class. There's Pepsi and everything that is not Pepsi. So this concept, in combination with your immediate psychological response, is what creates the word Pepsi. So when you're thinking of, let's say you're writing about Pepsi without ever using the word Pepsi, so you're gonna talk about this company that makes soda and I don't know, rivals Coca-Cola, as I've said here, and all that, you're immediately going to think of Pepsi because you've combined the concept with your psychological response and you've gotten the mechanism. So, but I want to touch on the example that I've used here because I think it was a really great example, if I do say so myself. So we talked about Plato's allegory of the cave and how there are ideas, and ideas are the purest forms of an object, right? Because the idea is in your mind, it's exactly how you want it to be, and how everything else is just a shadow of the idea. So think about a dog. You think about a dog as a concept, right? And you think about a dog. You think about the shape of a dog, what it means to be a dog, what dogs do. If I mention to you a breed that you've never heard of, such as a Basenji, and you don't know what a Basenji looks like, then you don't know that I'm talking about a dog. So that word that mechanism has no value to you, it might as well not be real. That dog is no longer real to you because you don't know what that word is. You don't know what the mechanism is. You don't know the concept. You don't have a psychological response. The word has no value as a mechanism. Words gain value in comparison to other words, and this value is determined by the, I guess, largeness of the concept that it signifies. So the example that I have here is a comparison of rape and seize, which are synonymous, but the English language is a living language and it evolves, and now rape is mostly used exclusively for sexual acts against someone's will, and seize is just to take anything by force, right? So whereas they used to be equal, now seize has a greater value because it can cover a number of concepts, whereas rape is now just this one thing. It's taking this one thing, or maybe depending on how you apply it, you're viewing rape as a greater value. When that happens to someone, it's not just taking a part of them physically. It does a lot of damage. It carries over into a lot of things and carries a lot of concepts, which I guess you can say that about seizing anything, but it's really just, it depends on how you apply it, right? And you would have to build that argument yourself. So I feel like I explained all of that really quickly. So I'm gonna go back over some of the things that I said. So words have values depending on the scope, that's the word, scope of the concepts that they cover. Words do not signify things, but rather concepts, and those concepts in combination with whatever response your image archive provides creates the word, the mechanism, the signifier. Oh, one last thing I think I missed. Signifiers have things that are signified. So dog signifies animal that barks and such. That's structuralism, and it's pretty complicated, and I just want to end this by saying that post-structuralism is a little more complicated because some critics see it as an extension of structuralism, whereas some see it as a complete rejection of structuralism. So do that research on your own.